Greetings, pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today I've got something very exciting for you. This is something people have been looking for quite some time. Yes, I know you see I have a gun in my hand, but no, we're not doing guns today, even though working on that, so that's coming. But you can see we have our circle here, and a lot of people have been asking for making it shrink, and look what it's doing. It's shrinking. So we have it working. It's working mostly. We have one little problem we're trying to work out, and that's that it's not showing up on the mini-map as you see there. So I'm not quite sure how to fix that yet. We're working on it. If you have suggestions, if you've run into the same problem, please let me know. But I wanted to show you some of the math behind what we've done here, show you the code. It is quite complex. I will just explain what it does, but I will provide it for you for download. I'll explain how to set it all up and everything. And as you can see here, we have a 12-second delay, and then it starts to shrink again, and it is shrinking based upon a new random center point. And I have an example scene to show you. I have a diagram, all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into it and talk about a little bit of the theory behind what we're doing here and how we're doing it. And then we'll talk about how we made it work. I'll show you the code. And also I need to work on the code because it is scaling my object, which makes my texture here stretch. So I'm aware of that as well. We're working on that. We're working on making it show up on the mini-map some more. But for now, as you can see, we have a small delay. On the right-hand side there, you'll see it says 4 different times it'll move, 12-second delay, 12-second movement time for each. So we're working on making a customized amount of time between each one, and you can have as many of those as you want in different times, and everything will work on all of that together. So let me go ahead and stop the scene for now, and let's take a look at what we did and how it works. Okay, so for example, let's begin with our current circle. This is a line renderer object, so all you have to do is create a brand new object. I called it current circle, which we've already done that before with making the circle show up on the map. So if you followed from the beginning, you're all set. If you're starting off here, create a blank object, call it current circle. And I have a couple of these folders here. These are just for my placeholders. So this object I called BRS_mechanics. It's again a blank object, so just right click, create empty, and then give it a name. So we named it this. And I just put it at the world origin, 000, which you can also just right click here on this little cog and say reset, and that will do the same thing. Underneath of that, we have another blank object called BRS_safe zone. And the same thing, create a blank object, right click, reset. And this, you're just using these like folders so we can kind of organize our work. Because you can see here, when everything's all collapsed, I only have 4 objects at the top level. So my hierarchy here is nice and clean. All right, so underneath of that, we have a couple of things, and you can go back to the first episode or second episode, and we create the actual zone walls. Let's take a look at that. This is an actual model that I provided for you that is the actual cylinder with a high degree of subdivisions here so that it's nice and smooth. And then we have this interior object, which is the interior of it, because based upon our material here that we created, and this is all covered in the previous episode, so go check it out. This will allow you to kind of look through the wall here, and you can see both sides. There's no seam, none of that kind of stuff, okay? So we have these objects here. You can ignore this one, this zone edge line. I'm not even using it right now, but this was my idea to put the text along the floor. And, you know, not a lot of people seem to like that, but I kept it in there. You can use that if you like. But then we have this current circle. So current circle is going to be a child of BRS safe zone. You can see that if I collapse this, it goes away because it's actually underneath. So current circle is just a blank object, and I have it currently set to 250 on the Y, just so that it kind of floats at the top edge of this. And then the X and Z are dependent upon the X and Z of the zone wall. So one way you can do that is if I create a new blank object. So here, let's call this tutorial object, right? You can see its position is all kinds of crazy. I think it's something to do with where I was looking in the world. It kind of raycast. I'm not sure how that works, but it created an object at some random point. If I focus on it, it's way down here. See how it's just not anywhere where I want it to be, and I want it to be inside of here. So if I focus on the object I want to move it to, which is the actual wall itself, here it is. I want this object to be kind of in the middle of this wall. So the way you can do that is to take it, click and drag and drop it. And now if I go and I change its properties here and I reset, it's now 000 with respect to its parent. So if I look at it now and say, where are you? It's right here. It's right underneath 000 of this guy, okay? And that way, it's a lot easier to then say, like my current circle, I did the same thing. But now if I take this object and I break it out, so let's drag it until you see this line and release. Look at its position in the world now. It's got the X and Y and Z because that's where that thing is relative to the world now, not relative to its parent. So that's how you can do that kind of thing. So to get the positioning set up all nice, current circle is relative to the world, but it's underneath of this guy. Okay? So with that all set, just kind of position it where you want it to be, and then attach the script. And the script here, I'll show you here, it's pretty crazy. We did a lot of stuff here. It's almost 200 lines of code. And you just drag and drop it onto your object here, and you'll see it will create this line renderer because it requires this to be here. So it will force Unity to put a line renderer component onto this object. Then we have our settings here. So my settings are as follows. For segments, I have 64. That just determines how round the line is. Then we have 50 and 50 on the X and Y radius because we're working with just a 100 meter circle right now. So this you can change later, and in the final asset, it'll be completely configurable. It'll even look up the radius of the object you're using, so don't worry about that. The zone radius factor, this is by what percentage do you want the next circle to be of its predecessor. So for me, I've got 50%, so it will be 50% smaller. I've done all the math, and based upon PUBG and what little I know of Fortnite, it does shrink by about that much every single time. Okay, then the shrinking zones. You'll see it'll come in like this in this zone times. You'll have to expand this, and this will say 0, and there'll be nothing here. So it'll look like this. If I do 0, it'll look like this, nothing here. So the number you put in here to this size of this array is how many shrinks in total do you want. So let's do 3 shrinks, okay? And the timing. So I tried to give it like 12 seconds. Let's do 15 seconds, and let's do 8 seconds. They don't even have to be the same. You can make it relevant to what you want. Really, it should probably be more like this, 15, 12, 8. You know, we're getting faster as we go. And once you've got that all set up, then I applied this material here. It's an unlit color, so that's one of the types you can choose. Excuse me, and I chose a color that I can just see nicely on the minimap, not a final color. And that's it. The rest will do it for you. So let's go ahead and take a look at our circle now. So if I hit play, right away when we drop into the world, you can't see this, so let me pause and see if I can show this to you. Console. I got some null references, don't worry, that's for other stuff. And here you can see it's counting down. So it's going to count down until it kicks off. Do. And it tells me that it's found a new center point. And I'm going to click here and say continue. And now it will start to shrink. And you can see it shows up on the minimap at first, but then as soon as it starts to move, it will just disappear. And I don't understand why it disappears from the minimap once it starts moving. Okay, so there we go. He's starting to move. You see it moving there. And again, see, it disappeared from the minimap. No idea why. So he's going to move, and then when he stops, this will take 15 seconds to move. It'll stop, and then it will take 12 seconds to move, and then it will take 8 seconds to move. So that's part of it, is getting it to move and shrink and scale, and I'll show you the code, and I'll explain kind of how that works. That's part of it. The other part was to figure out how to choose a new center point, because that's not an easy task, because you need to make sure that it's not going to be like somewhere out here, where we can't be because we need to be inside the circle because it has to get smaller. Now this one should be even faster, so any second now it'll start moving again. And I should put a timer in the bottom to show you when it's moving. Yep, see, that was even faster, so now it's moving again. So you can set these to more realistic values for a final game, 5 minutes. I think PUBG, it's 300 seconds, and then, like 150 seconds, and then 90 seconds, and that kind of thing. So you can change those values. But determining where it's closing, and again, I can't show you on the minimap, but it is working, is where does it close around? What point does it close around? That's something else entirely that we have to figure out. So let me show you 2 things. I'm going to show you a diagram, and then I'm going to show you an actual scene where I built like a little example of this to test that code. So I'll bring up Photoshop here and show you our diagram. So here's our 2 circles. So this outer circle here is what we're calling current circle. This is the current edge of the zone, right? Then the smaller circle here is the proposed next circle. Where are we going next? And what we need to do is determine, based upon the center of this circle, which is point B right here, we need to determine a place where we're going to put the center of our new circle, which is point A right here. And we need to understand that that point cannot be a certain distance away from B because otherwise it will draw this circle outside of this one. So the formula becomes that we have a couple of measurements. We know the center of the current circle. We know the center of the new circle, the random point we're going to be choosing, right? And then we know the diameter, the radius of this circle, which is C here, is this distance. So what we're going to say is if the distance between A and B, this distance here, this red line, is less than this distance, which is the radius of this circle, then we know it's an acceptable point to put a circle. If it's not, let's take a look at a bad example. So this is a bad example where clearly this line here, A to B, is longer than this, which without even seeing the circle, I can automatically tell you that won't work because it's going to draw it outside of the current circle. We know that mathematically. So that's how we're able to determine this. We know that this is acceptable because we know that C, although it might not look like it right here, C is a little bit longer than this, which means it's okay, this circle will exist inside of this big circle. Whereas here it's clearly longer, which means nope, it's no good, it's not going to work. So I will provide 2 images of this if you need to take a look at the positive and negatives here to kind of understand it better with the formula here. But this is what's going on, okay? So with that in mind, let me go ahead and do this. We'll do it live with you. Let's save these things, and I got to find my project that I did. Let's see, what was it called? Shrinking circle? Or what did I call my circle dev? I think that's maybe what I called it. Yeah, here it is. Okay, this is my weird little scene to test the mechanics that I built. So where we go? Where are we at? Find me. Here we are. Okay, so this is a little weird, but there is actually a cube that we're standing on, but it's invisible. I turned off the mesh render so I can look down at this and see this. So what this is doing is these cylinders are representing those 2 circles, and then this little flag-looking apparatus is that measurement between the center of the circle and its radius, so that I know that if this is shorter than this distance between these 2 points, I know that it's good. And my code here just, would rapidly go through different iterations of this. And I think that's under, let's see, in my scripts here, it's under my scripts, overlap test. So this is the code. It's only 30 or so lines, which actually figures out what's going on. So here's how it works. In the start, we're going to get our next circle radius. And that circle radius is going to be just one of the 2 local scales. Doesn't matter if it's X or Z, because with a circle, it's the same on both sides. And we're going to divide in half. So that's going to be half of our radius, right? So then I have that stored as the radius, which is half of my local scale. So half of the diameter, which is the local scale of X or Z. Then in the update, I'm going to call this function, really nice function inside of Unity. My random point is going to be equal to random.InsideUnitCircle, and that is based upon a 0 center. So then I'm going to say times some value. This value in our code actually gets replaced, but for me this happened to be 10, because if I look at this guy is 10 by 1 by 10. So that is my diameter of this circle. Okay? So I'm going to say find a random point inside a circle whose diameter is 10. Cool. So then my distance to center is going to be equal to the distance between my current circle's position and this random point. So wherever this guy is at and the point that I'm going to go to. All right. If that distance is less than the radius per our diagram, if that distance is less than the radius, right, then cool, let's go ahead and move our circle to that point. Oh, and keep your y value at 0. Now, what's interesting about this is this actual thing is actually a vector 2. The random point is a vector 2, meaning it's a 2-dimensional mathematical equation, which still works for us because we're dealing with circles. So this line is a little weird here in that when I'm going to say next circle.transform.position is equal to a vector 3, my x component of the vector 3 is the random point.x. My y component is 0 because I don't want it to move up and down. I just want it to move, sliding along a table. But then my z for the 3-dimensional object is getting its value from the rand point.y because it's a 2D array, so x and y, okay? So that makes sense, right? So then I'm doing that in update. I'm saying, pick a random point. If it works, let's move it to it. So let's check it out. If I hit play on this and I walk over top of this on my invisible box, we can see it work. So every single one of these points, it will find a point, and if it's inside, it'll move the thing to it. So you can see there's some weird jittery delay because it's trying points and those points are not working. So it's skipping those points and it's not moving the little, it looks like a boat, kind of like a little sail. So it's not moving a little boat diagram thing here. So that's why you have those random delays. But then when it does work, it moves it. So you can see here, this logic in with our circle for our, battle royale looking thing is perfect. That means that we're finding an appropriate point and we're going to move our circle into that point. Awesome. Okay, so let's go back to where we were, right? And I think I'm under current dev. Let's see. I think that's my scene, but it's inside of the other thing. Let's see, current dev. Let's go here. And we'll find ourselves. Whoop, there we are. Okay, so here we are, and let's bring this back up. Current circle, we've got our cool code here. See the 15, 12, and 8. So let's look at that code and look at what's going on here. Now, this is very complex, so please bear with me and I will explain it, and it will be available for download. So you can skip ahead if you're one of those, but if you want to learn about it, here we go. So up front, this is just a whole bunch of variables, okay? These are all the variables we're going to use, and my dad and I have been putting some comments in here to explain along the way, but essentially these are all the things you need to make it work. And a lot of these that say range and header, that's the stuff here where you actually see these things where you can slide the range of these things. Is really cool. It makes it so that you can make it really finite, adjustable, very kind of hands-on for your end user, okay? So then let's scroll down a little bit and let's get going. So we're going to create our game object line renderer. We're going to say, let's get a hold of that. We're going to get our radiuses, our X and our Y. We're going to get our circle, and we're going to get our zone wall. Cool. We're going to say time pass is time.delta time. That's just a quick handle to time.delta time. So then in update, we're going to say that our scale is equal to the radiuses, right? We're going to set our circle to shrink, and we have this variable called shrinking. So if we are shrinking, we need a new center point that is within the bounds of our current circle. So this is kind of like what we were just talking about with the other example, right? Center point equals, call this function called new center point, give it where we are, give it our radius, and give it the shrinking to radius. So distance moved to center is going to be equal to distance between these 2 points, right? And this we use in a lerp, so we're going to update that over time. That's what makes the circle actually shrink slowly, and then we're going to move it at the same time. So then this line confused me at first, but essentially what we're saying here is if it fails for whatever reason, and we're going to go back up and keep doing this until this is true, then this is going to be equal to, center point is going to say we're just not equal to what we want. So let's set it to some random value here, which is 0, negative 100, 0. We're just kind of pushing it off into the world and say, nope, that doesn't work, try again. But that will essentially keep this false. So that means this will keep trying until it finds our point that we actually need, okay? So then we're debugging where the new center point is so we know that we've got it right. Moving the center point over time, transform.position, vector3.lerp. So we're lerping between 2 points. And this is our distance to move, time to shrink, times delta time. So the way a lerp works is essentially it says, you want to move from A to B over 10 seconds, say. It's going to break that up into like 1,000 little mini movements. And then every update, we're going to move one of those little mini movements. And then lerp is going to say, okay, now let's calculate it again because we moved one of those mini movements. Now it's between 9.92 seconds remaining and 999 little segments. And so it does the math again. So then this is to move the center point, and then this is to actually shrink the diameter. So the diameter is using mathf.moveTowards. So moving an object versus shrinking an object, we're not actually moving it, so we use move towards because we're moving a value towards another value. So our radius is moving towards the shrink radius by what amount? By the shrink radius divided by the time to shrink times delta time. So what amount are we shrinking to divided by how long? So 10 divided by 2 seconds times regularized time. And then we're going to draw our circle again. I think that somewhere in here we need to force like a redraw, and that's what will cause it to show up on the minimap again. But we'll be working on that. Okay. So here we're just kind of counting our time. So as the radius shrinks, time passed is equal to time delta time. Shrinking is no longer false. So if we've already gotten to that point where we've reached the end of our timer, shrinking is false. We have not obtained a new center, which means that will cause it to say, let's go back and do it again. to find another new center for the next zone thing over here. So we've shrunk by 15. Then it will say, okay, I'm done shrinking. Shrinking is false. New center is false, which means, hey, I need to go find a new center for the 12 to begin, right? Time that passed, so we're incrementing the clock. Cool. Now that we've passed, the next threshold for time delay is what? So this is kind of figuring that out. Use the zone factor radius as a percentage, and this is going to reset the timer because we know that we've halted, next zone timer. We're going to call this function. So here's we're going to count down. This is mostly for, you can ignore this part really because this is mostly for the debugging stuff, but it's counting the time so we can count down to say here's when it's about to happen. But this will be provided in sort of a debug background kind of function at the end so that you can call this in your code. Okay, there we are. All right, so now here's our private functions. This is really stuff that's got called before. We've already talked about this, but I just want to show it to you really quick. So the new center point, we have this total countdown. This prevents an endless loop, which will kill Unity and its performance. So we give it some asinine number, but it's still less than infinity. So that way, if we keep trying, and for some reason out of 30,000 attempts you haven't found one yet, come on, you have to, right? So this will just keep going until we find a new point and it returns it. And this is calling a lot of that, see the random inside circle times the radius divided by times 2. So see, this is what I had in my code, the overlap over here, see, random point inside blah, blah, blah. That's this right here. So this is just finding you the new point and returning it. So all of this gets called up here when it said right here, new center point. We just jump down here and say, okay, let's do all that math. It's like scratch paper. Do all that math down here and jump back. Okay, cool. And then this is the same thing for the next zone timer. We're increasing our counter timers. And then here down here, general purpose method for figuring out the radii. So these are all kind of helper functions. So you don't have to worry about that too much. But essentially, here's the code. It will be provided as is, which includes the fact that there's a problem with, we can't see it on the minimap yet, but we're working on that. But I wanted to show it to you and explain how it works. And you can provide extra times here, and you can make some of these really quick. Let's try to make these like really short and just see what happens. So let's play with it a bit. And I'm still frustrated that it's not showing up on the minimap, but here's our circle, and I can see it on the minimap here, and then as soon as it starts to move, it goes away. And I don't know why. But now it's found a new position and it's moving to that position. And I'm going to work on providing the second line. So there's the first line, which we're not seeing here, but there will be a second line as well, just like in PUBG, where there's the line of the current circle, which is this one moving. And then there should be another line to say, where's the new one going to be, right? And then two should meet up perfectly when it stops moving. So this should stop pretty soon because it's only half the size of the previous one. Yeah, right there. There we go. So there's that. And then, yes, you can see I've got a gun here. So on top of all these mechanics, a lot of people have been asking for proper gun tutorials. And to be honest, at first I was kind of like, no, I'm not going to do that because there's plenty out there. Just go find them, do a little bit of research. And I did the research myself just because I was curious. And there's not really a lot. And there's not a lot that I found that are really good. So I'm trying to absorb that and then build it for you guys. So here I'm working on the aim down sights and, especially for like the sniper. And I'll show you a quick preview of what I've been working on for that is under the first person controller here, I have these weapon slots and each slot has its own setup for the guns. So this is the sniper slot. So if you hide that, then I can go to, there's a shotgun. See, we got that. We have a rifle, which I think is some kind of an M16. Let's see, maybe I put that, yeah. An M4 carbine, pardon me. So we have that. We have an AK-47, of course. And then we have a pistol. And all of these have their own, so under weapon slots, that's a particular, see again, zeroed out. I don't know why the negative 0.8 for that, but, and then each weapon itself, its slot has a customized position to that. So you can see these are slightly different. So if I go to the game view here and I look at each one, so let's hide the pistol and bring out, say, the carbine. They each have a different position based upon the type of the rifle. I have a friend of mine who was a Navy guy for 20 years. He came over and showed me some of his personal weapons and said, where the butt would be against your shoulder, here's how you would be able to see it. So he's been very helpful in helping me figure out how to make these things much more realistic for you guys. So I'm going to try that. And he showed me how the scopes work. And yeah, you're not really putting this up against your eye because If you do, then as soon as this thing fires, you have the biggest black eye in the world. So that's also coming. I just wanted to mention that weapon stuff is coming. I'm working on it. It's slow. I want to get it right. I'm not just going to get it good enough. I want to get it right. And we are working continually on the circle, but I wanted to give you guys, here it is officially. It's working. The circles shrink, they move, they do all those great things. Again, it's not showing up in the mini-map. We're working that out. Keep an eye on social media because I will mention when it's available, and I'll say, hey, I'll just push out like an update to the code. I won't do a whole new video just on that. But for the finalized, we're going to do like a set of video tutorials similar to these that are complete setup for the finalized asset, and that will be in there as well because we'll figure it out. And you guys are a great community, so I know we'll figure it out together as well. So again, I will provide the code here. I will provide these diagrams here so you guys can see kind of an example of what's going on. And then the actual code and just attach it to your object. Follow the tutorial as I said earlier, and this will all work out for you. If you guys have any questions at all, if you guys know how to fix the minimap thing, please let me know. I'm a student just like you are. I'm learning all the time, and I just turn around and share with you guys what I learned. So please teach me as well. If you guys have a lesson that I should learn, let me know. I appreciate your help very much, and thank you so much, guys, for all the kind attention on the channel. We're just hovering at 2,600 subs now, which is crazy to me. I love it. Thank you so much. It's so encouraging to see so many people jumping in on this, and let's continue the journey together. So, without further ado, until next time, guys, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.